And good evening, everyone. I'm Bob Grip.
And I'm Lenise Lagon. So good to see you for this Fox 10 News special event.
That's right. This is a debate featuring the three Republican candidates for Baldwin County Sheriff. We're in the ballroom of Homestead Village of Fairhope, and we want to thank the people here at Homestead Village for letting us use the space.
Oh, yeah. We needed the space, too. We've got a nice crowd here tonight. We are going to be the moderators of this event with a panel of journalists behind me asking some questions, and then I will also be taking some questions from you via social media.
That's right. In addition to this broadcast on Gulf Coast CW, the debate is also being streamed live right now on fox10tv.com, our website. Well, first, let's meet the candidates. Huey Hoss-Mack has been sheriff in Baldwin County since 2007 and is the president of the Alabama Sheriff's Association. Sheriff Mack has been married for 26 years. He and his wife have 2 sons. Larry Milstead served as Baldwin County's chief deputy for 18 years. He served on the Emergency 911 Board and is a past president of the Bay Minette Rotary Club. He and his wife have 2 children. Jeff Dunn is a former Baldwin County Sheriff's deputy who now works as an investigator for the District Attorney's Office. Dunn and his wife have 5 children and 4 grandchildren. And now to the members of our panel. Lori Dubose is the general manager of WABF Radio. She has more than 30 years of experience in broadcasting. She lives here in Fairhope with her husband and 2 teenage boys. Brendan Kirby is an investigative reporter for AL.com and its 3 newspaper affiliates. He is based in Mobile and joined the Press Register in 2000, covering the courts, politics, and other topics in Baldwin County. He lives in Daphne with his wife Carrie and 2 children. Cliff McCullum is the managing editor of the Gulf Coast newspaper group and is the primary editor for the Baldwin Times. He began his journalism career at the Opelika Observer, where he was the news editor and an award-winning columnist. He's also a former high school teacher and a community college professor. Now, here are the ground rules for tonight's debate. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement and then 1 minute for a closing statement at the end of the hour. Answers to the questions from the panel or the viewers will be limited to 1 minute per candidate. Follow-up questions from the panelists will be allowed. And I want to ask the audience once again to make sure your cell phones are off, and also please hold your applause until the end of our debate. No reaction from the crowd, please, to anybody's answer until then. Now, before our debate began, the candidates drew numbers to see who would open first with their opening statements. And Jeff Dunn, you have your opening statement now.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks to Fox 10 for putting on this debate. Thanks for this large audience here. It means a lot that this many people are this excited about this race, and as we are, the 3 of us are, and it's put a lot of hard work into it. But my 19 years in law enforcement, I started at the bottom, the entry level with the sheriff's office, and I've seen things through the years, worked through 2 different administrations, under Jimmy Johnson and also under Sheriff Mack. And I have a different perspective on the department from looking at it from the bottom up and working my way up through the ranks. And I spent 7.5 years in the patrol division, and that's something that gives me an edge over, when my beliefs, over the 2 candidates here, that I'm the only one of the 3 that spent any time in the patrol division. I also have an extensive background in narcotics investigation, over 8 years with the sheriff's office and another 3 years with the district attorney's office. And with the population growth we're facing, there's certain things that I'd like to do. One of those is to start a reserve deputy program so we can boost up our manpower and shift our full-time people in areas we need. And this would enable us to put school resource officers in all the schools, to hopefully start a Marine division, and so on and so on. And that's the beginnings of it. It just could lead to many more things. And I'd also like to stop taxing our law-abiding citizens with this highest pistol permit in the state. I would like to immediately lower it down, because it is a tax. It's called a fee, but if you don't pay the tax, then there's a penalty for it. And that's one of the plans that I plan on doing right off the bat.
All right, Mr. Dunn, thank you very much. Next, Larry Milstead.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Larry Milstead, Republican candidate for Sheriff of Baldwin County. I'm seeking the office of sheriff of Baldwin County based on a lot of encouragement I've had from citizens of Baldwin County and my personal convictions. I served in the United States Army. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I'm a member of the Vietnam Veterans of American Fraternal Order of Police and the National Rifle Association. I have a passion for our Second Amendment rights. I have degrees in business administration and management. I graduated from the Police Academy in numerous schools and seminars conducted by federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. I spent most of my law enforcement career with the Baldwin County Sheriff's Office. I served 18 years as your Chief Deputy Sheriff of the Sheriff's Office, and as Chief Deputy I was responsible for all the divisions of the Sheriff's Office to include the jail and preparing our fiscal year budget. I taught for 17 years in the Police Academy. My wife Kay and I are members of the Daphne United Methodist Church. I've served on the Emergency 911 Board and numerous committees with the Department of Human Resources. I'm seeking the office of sheriff because I have a passion for the law enforcement profession. I feel that I have the experience, education, and demonstrated leadership to take the sheriff's office to the next level here in Baldwin County. Baldwin County is the largest county in the state of Alabama and the fastest growing county in the state of Alabama.
Colin, please.
Thank you, Bob. In late April, Bay Minette resident Victor Brown died after smoking the drug spice, or synthetic marijuana, perhaps highlighting the problem illegal drugs are causing in Baldwin County. What would you do to address and combat the issues that illegal drugs like synthetic marijuana, meth, and heroin are causing in Baldwin County?
Mr. Dunn.
Well, in response to the sheriff's statistics of where the crime rate is going down, well, spice is a crime, and it's poisoning our youth and destroying families, just like the meth epidemic is. And the sheriff's office has the same number of narcotics investigators as they had 19 years ago when I started. It hadn't changed. And I've heard both the sheriff and like Mr. Milstead speak of one of the number one problems in the county is drugs. But yet we haven't increased our numbers to work that and combat that epidemic. And so as crime rate goes down, we just had a death in Mobile County the same way, and before long with the population growth, we're going to be just like Mobile County. The crime is coming in here, and we're going to have to make decisions and step up our patrol efforts and our manpower.
Okay, Sheriff Mack, please.
Synthetic marijuana is a misnomer, folks. It's synthetic poison. It is not marijuana, and it is a danger to our society. Just last week, I was in a meeting with Sheriff Cochran and other individuals in Mobile County and from Baldwin County to start putting together to how to eradicate this drug that's coming into our society, and particularly among our teenagers. We have a plan that we're going to implement not only immediately, but also this summer with our children and coming up into the school year to specifically address the issue of spice in this illegal drug. Mr. Dunn said that the same number of narcotics investigators is the same number that was there a few years ago. Well, I'll submit to you that perhaps the people that are doing our narcotics investigations today are doing a better job than what was being done a few years ago. Through technology, through efficiency, through competency, we are fighting and winning the battle on drugs in Baldwin County. All you've got to do is read the newspaper, look on the TV, and look at the number of drug arrests that we're getting, and we're fighting it every day. And I'm very proud of our efforts, particularly in the narcotics arena and as we combat this new drug spice.
Thank you, Sheriff. Mr. Milstead.
Well, spice is a designer drug just like those drugs that we had back in the 60s and 70s, and education for our children is nice and it's certainly necessary. But again, going back to my original point about the unincorporated areas of this county, there are meth labs now that are operating out of the trunks of cars. Meth is a pervasive problem in Baldwin County. The North Baldwin County woods are full of meth labs. Our Baldwin County Drug Task Force has not responded. People are going to the Walmarts and the drug stores and they're calling it smurfing, and that's where they go and they buy over-the-counter Sudafed to get the ephedrine and cook it out of it. Very little, if anything, is being done about this. They are approaching people in the Walmart parking lots, giving them the money to go and buy the drug and telling them to keep the change. And I submit to you that it has not been reduced, and unfortunately, we do not have a paper and much news media response as to reporting these drug arrests and whatnot, and which I think is a disservice to the residents of the county for you to know really what is going on.
Thank you, Mr. Milstead. Thank you. Now we're going to get a question from Lanice Lagan that comes actually from one of you. Lanice?
All right, thank you, Bob. We've been getting a lot of questions on social media. We're taking your questions on Twitter, Facebook, and then also a lot of people that came out here tonight have submitted their questions to me as well. Our digital executive producer is over there working all of our social media platforms right now, taking your questions. You still have time to get them in. So let's take a look at one of the questions that's coming in from Twitter right now. And that question is concerning jail overcrowding. They want to know what the candidates will do, what is their agenda concerning jail overcrowding.
Okay, Sheriff, we can start with you.
When I became sheriff in 2007, our jail was overcrowded. Your jail basically at that time was about a 625-bed jail. We actually took an area of the jail that had been more or less mothballed into a storage area. We converted that into existing bed space, bringing the total number of beds up to 649. We were faced with a population at times of well over 700 inmates. We immediately implemented a program called Community Corrections, which helped us to manage our jail population in working with individuals and giving the judges the opportunity to do different sentences. It's becoming harder and harder to send people to state prison in our state because of the Alabama sentencing guidelines. So more and more people are being sentenced to your county jail, and that falls back on the sheriff's shoulders. Right now, I think our daily population is averaging about 550 to 570, so we are not at capacity. We do have room through efficiency and management. However, we will need to grow our jail as the population of Baldwin County grows. We do have a plan for that. We're currently exploring different options, one of which is the cooperation of a jail that will be in the Gulf Shores, Foley, and Orange Beach area.
Thank you, Sheriff. Time. Mr. Milstead.
The sheriff talks about community corrections. We researched community corrections thoroughly, okay? Community corrections is really a transference of the state's problems back to the county level by holding prisoners that have been convicted of felonies in what is called a community corrections program. They still have to sleep in the jail, and they go out in the communities and work during the day. I am told by members of the county commission that that budget now for community corrections has expanded to something like $1 million when the thing was sold on it being self-sustaining by keeping part of the monies that the prisoners earned and getting a small reimbursement from the state. I'm also told by many, many members of the public and the bonding companies that it's taking 5 and 6 hours to get people bonded out of that jail. So you, as a member of the public, if you go up there to get a loved one bonded out of that jail, you may sit in that anteroom for 5 or 6 hours waiting to get the necessary documentation to get that person out.
Thank you, Mr. Milstead.
It shouldn't be over an hour.
Thank you. Mr. Dunn.
Well, the sheriff said that they're looking at plans of building a jail in the south end of the county. Well, I'm for that only if we get our other elected officials, our judges, to start utilizing our county courthouses. The two satellite offices in Fairhope and Foley, the jail has to stay in a close proximity to where you're going to have court because they're transported back and forth to court daily. So if we're not going to utilize our two satellite courthouses for trials for the south end of the county, then it's pointless. So we have to get the judges on board with us too to make this thing work.
All right, Lanice, you have it.
All right, thank you, Bob. We are still getting questions coming in from Twitter. I asked the last question from one of our social media platforms, so now I want to take some of the questions that we got from people who came out here tonight. And one of those questions for the candidates is this: what is your stance on gun control and gun-free areas?
Mr. Dunn.
Well, you can't claim to be a Second Amendment supporter and then bend in different directions. I'm fully support the Second Amendment. I think the pistol permit fee is an unfair tax on law-abiding citizens, and if law-abiding citizens, I would like them to be armed. I feel we're safer out here if our law-abiding citizens are armed, no matter where they're at. If you look around, if you think about a pawn shop, for an example, When's the last time you heard of a pawn shop being robbed? They don't get robbed because their owners there are all armed. I mean, think about that. How much safer would we be if all the bank tellers were armed? You think we'd have a lot of bank robberies? That's the way I look at it. I think the more law-abiding citizens are armed, the better off we will be.
Sheriff Mack.
I'm a full supporter of the Second Amendment. I believe that people should have a right to keep and bear arms in their homes, on their persons. In fact, we even have an individual here tonight that's carrying a gun on his side because Alabama is an open carry state. However, there have been certain restrictions that have been placed both by the state government as it relates to concealed carry, of handguns. And the sheriff is the primary enforcer of that because the sheriff does issue the pistol permits. I'm a lifelong member of the NRA. I believe that people should have the right to keep and bear arms, as I said. However, as sheriff of the county, I think the question was actually about gun-free zones. One of the things that the law specifically addressed this past year out of the legislature was allowing people, such as school boards, such as private businesses, to regulate whether or not firearms could be carried onto these places. Our schools are sanctuaries of safety for our children. A business owner should have the right to say whether or not someone can carry a gun on their premises if they own that business and they're working in that business.
Thank you, Sheriff. Mr. Milstead.
My job as the sheriff or a law enforcement officer is to enforce the law and not make the law. As it relates to gun-free zones, and it is true that, and I believe in the rights of private property ownership, you should have the right to regulate whether or not you want people to carry firearms on your premises. I am for every law-abiding citizen to own the weapon that they choose. I understand there's a policy within the sheriff's office to not sign off on Class 3 applications for things like suppressors or fully automatic weapons. And I do not, as chief deputy and when I was with Sheriff Johnson, we signed for those things, and I believe that you have a constitutional right to own that if you go through the requirements of alcohol, tobacco, and firearms application process. I am as pro-gun as we can possibly be. I am against convicted felons possessing guns and killing children like they killed the young lady on the island over there, and no charges were filed against them.
Mr. Milstead, thank you very much. Time. Brendan Kirby.
Thanks, Bob. To each of you, what would you say is the biggest mistake you've made during your law enforcement career, and how did you learn from it?
Sheriff Mack.
Lord. Brandon, you want to give me a hint? I would say that sometimes I become impatient, particularly because I have a desire to try to bring things to a resolution. I look back at a 28-year career in law enforcement, and one of the things that I've tried to particularly teach investigators is to slow down sometimes and really look into an investigation and take your time and document and things of that nature. So I think I cannot come up with one particular incident. I think there have been times collectively that I look back because I'm my world's worst critic. I constantly look back and try to evaluate decisions I have made and things I have done. And so I think a lot of times it just kind of goes back to being able to be slowed down, be patient with certain things, but yet still be persistent to accomplish the objective.
Mr. Milstead.
Having been in management most of my adult life, I think as far as mistakes made or maybe major mistake is really not learning people as well as I should in their personalities and whether or not I should have put as much trust in them as I did, and I paid the price for it. As far as it relates to pure law enforcement, I did arrest an individual back in the 90s that had been accused of a serial rapist based on some information I got from the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences, and I wound up staying in federal court over that because it turned out to be the wrong individual. And I paid the price for that. I was ultimately dismissed from the case. But I guess maybe being too trusting when sometimes I should have been suspect of some individuals and the information they were providing me, and I'm talking about law enforcement officers. As I told you, I taught in the police academy for 17 years, and you learn not everybody is in this for the right reason.
Mr. Milstead, thank you very much. Mr. Dunn.
And that's, the question was the biggest mistake?
Yes.
Well, I guess looking back on a long career and thinking about things that I did back in my younger days in patrol, the one thing I look back on that I regret the most is we were working these traffic grants, federal grants to work traffic, and it was a numbers thing, where you had to get so many contacts per hour to keep this grant. I regret participating in those things because it was a numbers game, and it changed up what I believe changed the face of the department. And participating in roadblock checkpoints, it was like hunting over a baited field back in my younger days, and now I look back as it being an infringement on our rights. Maybe case law that backs it up and what you can do, but I still feel like now it was an infringement, and that would be my biggest regret.
All right, thank you very much. Cliff McCullum now, next question.
Thank you, Bob. At a recent Baldwin County Commission meeting, the Juvenile Justice Program was recognized as an underfunded necessity for the department. Currently, some juvenile justice officials have to meet deputies at gas stations and Walmart parking lots across the county at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning in order to process and meet these juveniles face to face. How would you address this issue, specifically working to find the funding to adequately fund this department?
Mr. Milstead.
Well, first of all, the Juvenile Detention Center actually works for the county commission and not the office of sheriff. And it's really not the responsibility of the office of sheriff to seek funding for that detention center, okay? Now, we fully support the Juvenile Detention Center. We try to transport the juveniles as conveniently as possible to the closest juvenile probation officer, because you've got to make contact with them when you arrest a juvenile. But going to the crux of your question, it is not the responsibility of the sheriff to seek funding for the Juvenile Detention Center. It's up to the Baldwin County Commission. And Baldwin County is exploding in growth with more and more people moving over here. There's more and more juvenile crime, and it is going to have to be addressed. But I do not believe it is the responsibility of the sheriff.
Mr. Dunn.
Well, in the days when I was in patrol, it was when you handled a juvenile just like you would an adult. And now there's laws changed. We don't do that anymore. It took the, it's made it complicated. For a patrol deputy out there who comes across a juvenile committing a crime, at one time we could just arrest them, take them to the Juvenile Detention Center, you signed papers on them, and you left them there. Then the Juvenile Detention Center either released them back to their parents or they were held until a court date. I don't know what happened with that system. The law changed on it, but that's the system we should get back to, because our kids are not going to learn anything if we just have to meet out in the parking lot and turn them right back over. They can go back out and commit the same crime again. So that's what we need to look at.
All right, Mr. Dunn. Sheriff Mack.
This is one I feel real good talking about because problem solved. As Mr. Milstead said, it's not the responsibility of the sheriff to seek funding for another entity. However, our deputies were literally having to meet the intake officers for the face-to-face interview that is required by the Alabama Juvenile Justice Act that was adopted several years ago, and doing these intakes in parking lots and all over the county, and it was tying deputies up. So the vested interest was for the sheriff's office to cooperate with the county commission and the juvenile judge, Carmen Bosch, and the juvenile authorities. We came together and we put our heads together in a cooperative spirit, and we solved the problem. Currently, the funding has been allocated by the Baldwin County Commission to fund the additional intake officers, so that we will have intake officers now at Juvenile Detention Center 24/7, and we can now pick that juvenile up and, as Jeff said, take them back to the juvenile center and not tying our deputies up waiting to meet with an intake officer, which keeps the deputy on the road answering the calls and patrolling the areas.
All right,
that
thank
was
you.
our vested interest in this.
Thank you, Sheriff. Lanice, you have another question for us.
That's right, Bob, and this question actually comes from our Facebook page at Fox 10 News. This question is from Yodi, who asks, Mobile County Sheriff Sam Cochran has initiated several community-based efforts to get the community's involvement in what's going on in their neighborhood, like the Tex Meth, Tex Thug, and Tex Spice initiatives. They seem to be working quite well. Why can't we get this in Baldwin County?
Mr. Dunn.
Well, that's a good question. Why can't we get it done? I believe we can. And that gets back to bringing law enforcement and our community back together. And that's one way where this reserve program can work for that. We'll get more of our community involved with volunteers and get everybody on the same page of music. And that's it's a very good thing. That tip line really does work.
Sheriff Mack.
We have. We've worked very well with Sheriff Cochran. He has a staff of computer programmers that we have been working with, but the Sheriff's Office, in my tenure as Sheriff, has established a Twitter, Facebook page. We remodified our web page so that now we have report crime, that you can actually report nonviolent and non-urgent crime over our web page. We have My Baldwin section on the website where you can now actually go in and look at the crime mapping system. This is also linked to Sheriff Cochran's system over in Mobile County, because Sheriff Cochran and I have really formed a great working relationship. We share information back and forth. We do cooperate with his tip lines that they have there, and we're sharing information. And what Sheriff Cochran and I have found is, rather than each of us running our own individual entities, we have chosen to work together, because crime doesn't stop at Mobile Bay. Crime comes from Mobile into Baldwin, and sometimes from Baldwin into Mobile. And so we work very aggressively in partnering with those programs, and we do have these instances in place.
Thank you, Mr. Sheriff. Thank you. Next question is from Brendan Kirby.
Thank you. What is your vision for the first 100 days in office if elected? And please share some insight into how you make decisions.
Mr. Milstead.
Well, the first 100 days, any good manager goes in and assesses a situation before they start making radical changes, okay? To talk about going in and cleaning house and doing this and doing that is not a good management tactic. I've got to go in and assess all the programs that have been put in place since I left there as the Chief Deputy Sheriff of the county, and try to determine those that are necessary, those that are providing a service that is necessary. There's been a lot of people added on to the Sheriff's Office. Some of them, I don't know what they do, various clerical positions or whatnot, and that's one of the problems we've got in government today is bureaucracy, and it continues to grow in the federal and the state and certainly the local level. We've got a $20 million budget. That's a lot of money, and if the scarce resource is the deputies out there on the road, I've got to assess the situation with the Baldwin County Corrections Center. I'm told that basically the training program has been abandoned somewhat there. There is a lot of problems with that jail and the management of it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dunn.
Well, I agree partly with that you can't go in there making changes right off the bat without taking assessments. And one thing, when Sheriff Mack came in 2007, all of our leave time was canceled so that he could come around and meet with every individual of the department. Well, that never took place. And that's something I see that it has to happen, because you got so many good people there who have their own plans or ideas for the department, and if you don't listen to those people and let them have a voice in creating this office, then that's a morale killer. And unlike what I have to disagree with Sheriff Mack said earlier about the morale being all-time high. I've talked to a lot of officers inside the correction center, outside, and that's not what they're saying. And you can when you hear that much, there's got to be some truth to it. So I think I would meet with every member of the department, like we were told back in 2007, and give them a voice in this department.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Sheriff Mack.
In my first 100 days, in my first term, we did, and I will, continue to do the same thing. We entered a time in which we actually met with the existing officials of the Sheriff's Office at that time. In fact, had several conversations with then Chief Deputy Larry Milstead about the transition. We built a program whereby we set certain goals, and we accomplished every goal that we set out. We went out and came into a office that was in dire need at that time of some new leadership, of some new vitality. We did decrease the jail population. We did stand true to some of the promises we made about establishing our children's programs, about reaching out to the community, about increasing our deputy coverage, decreasing our patrol areas. So when I'm reelected as your sheriff again next Tuesday, I will continue to do those same things. Be attentive to the needs of the community, be attentive to the needs of the employees, and also be attentive to fighting crime in Baldwin County as we have done for the past 8 years.
All right. Thank you, Sheriff. Next question is from Cliff McCullum.
We touched on this a little bit earlier, but I'd like to expand. Specifically, the need for a potential jail or processing facility in South Baldwin County. There's been talk of partnering with some of the cities there, Foley, Orange Beach, and Gulf Shores. What are your opinions on this potential proposal, and would it be a help for Baldwin County?
Mr. Dunn.
Well, one thing about this county, it's so big geographically, but the population getting from point A to point B is slowing it down tremendously. And so one thing we have to do is quit trying to centralize everything. And so with the jail in the south end would help, but like I say, you have to utilize our courthouses down here to make it work. Same thing with our investigative command. Everybody reports to the Robertsdale. It's centralized. And then they've got guys that are responsible for the north end areas having to drive to Robertsdale to go back and work the north end. Just makes no sense to me. I think we need to utilize office space in the north end of the county and in the south end. We have office space at Fairhope, Foley, Robertsdale, and Bay Minette, and we need to spread out. We've got enough technology now that we can keep in touch and still have some commands, somebody under the command staff, but spread out and quit being centralized.
Okay. Sheriff Mack, what do you think about this question?
And it's a question that we're trying to answer right now. That's why we have commissioned with the cities of Orange Beach, Gulf Shores, and Foley a feasibility study, because we just don't want to jump into this program and spend a lot of money if it's not going to be efficient to the operation of the sheriff's office. We have a situation whereby deputies arrest people in the south end of the county, and we have to land those individuals at our municipal jails and then wait for transport to get them to Bay Minette so that they can book out. Now, what that does is it ties up valuable resources of our deputies. It ties up resources when we get to the jail. Sometimes there are several individuals because of that are having to be booked in. Well, the reason we're looking at this is because if we can come together in a cooperative effort rather than the sheriff building another big addition onto the jail in Bay Minette, Gulf Shores building a new jail, Orange Beach building a new jail, if we can come together and pool our resources, our finances, and our operational cost, this will be a cost-efficient solution to the south end of the county that will benefit all the entities that are involved. I believe ultimately saving money, ultimately improving the efficiency of this process, and improving our overall operation of our corrections facility.
Okay, the question to you, Mr. Milstead, as well.
Well, it's something, in my opinion, its time has come. I was in on the, I started my career in the old Baldwin County Jail, and I was in on the building of the towers that we've got now, so I understand. It is a huge investment, and it is not something that can be entered into lightly. And if there has to be a study, as Sheriff Mack has related to, and there has to be an ironclad agreement with these cities that want to participate in it. It is not something that the county can bear on its own. It has to be a collaborative effort because it is a continuing expense. It is going to have to be staffed 24/7, a medical section. You're going to have the ability to feed the inmates. That is no small thing, ladies and gentlemen, and it's going to require a lot of money. Yes, it will contribute to the efficiency and the release time as far as deputies are concerned. There's a lot of things we can do online with the computers today to relay the information to the courts and to the circuit clerk, but it cannot be entered into lightly, and those that are going to be involved in it are going to have to pay their share to participate in it.
All right, thank you very much. Well, as I said, this hour was going to go by very quickly. Now it's time for the closing statements. The candidates will have time now. We'll start in the reverse order, this time with Sheriff Mack for his closing statement.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight and for your attentiveness that you've given each one of these candidates. Public service is best approached as a humble servitude with a compassionate, fair heart that strives every day to learn from those that you serve, from leading those that you work with, and submitting to the supreme power of our Creator. That's what motivates me to be your sheriff. I've been very fortunate over the past few weeks to receive the endorsements of Congressman Joe Bonner, Attorney General Luther Strange, the Chiefs of Police of Baldwin County, business organizations, the Alabama Real Estate Association, state law enforcement, as well as other individuals. But tonight, I ask for the most important endorsement of all, your vote, because that's what means the most to me. I love being your sheriff. I love serving you, and I don't take the job lightly. I want to continue to serve you, and as the election comes up next Tuesday and I'm reelected, I will serve all the citizens of Baldwin County, regardless of who you vote for. That's my pledge to you, because that's what your sheriff should do for you. That's what you should expect from your sheriff, is service, service, service to this great county that we live in. I ask you to vote for me on June the 3rd, and may God bless Baldwin County.
Mr. Milstead, your closing statement.
First of all, thank you for your attentiveness, and I appreciate every one of you taking the time to show up. Thursday evening, you could be sitting home watching TV, but obviously you've got an interest in this. I think I have stated my case as to why I would be a good sheriff, a better sheriff in Baldwin County with my credentials. And if you will honor me with your vote, it'll be my honor to serve you as your sheriff. And I would appreciate it when you go to the polls, vote for Larry Milstead June 3rd. Thank you.
And Mr. Dunn.
Well, I thank y'all too for being here, and it would be, I want to make it easy on you. I'm going to be the first one on the list on the ballot, so you don't have to even scan down. You just go ahead and fill it in. But what I'd like to do, when you elect me sheriff, is show you what a true constitutional sheriff is about, and show that we have to have someone here that can protect your rights and not take them away from you. And it's like with the TSA monitoring our emails and stuff. That's no different than what happened here in the courthouse where these microphones were placed. That was a violation of the Constitution. And for a constitutional sheriff, you can't do that. There's not two separate laws for the citizens or for the sheriff. And I want to show you the difference in that and show you what a true constitutional-minded sheriff would do. And I ask for your vote on June 3rd, and thank you.
All right, Mr. Dunn. Okay, Lenise, what kind of reaction have you gotten from social media to this?
Well, Bob, people have been sounding off on our Twitter and Facebook page. I noticed the comments were coming in more steadily as the candidates started talking about overcrowding issues and also different satellite areas being set up throughout the county. Perhaps that's something the candidates will think about going forward if there will be expansions in the other areas of the county here. I also saw a lot of questions about synthetic marijuana. A lot of people seem to be concerned about how the county is going to tackle that issue. So there are a lot of different questions and concerns out there, and people will make their decision June 3rd. Bob?
All right, thank you very much, Lenise. I want to thank our panelists here for their wonderful questions. I want to thank all the sheriff's candidates for being here. Everyone here in the audience at Homestead Village, you have been just terrific. You've been quiet. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night.